When the portfolio assignment began, the task of reviewing all of that work over 2 years was pretty daunting. The ability to recall and remember the assignments to try and provide myself with a true reflection was pretty challenging. As the reflection paper was coming together, the ability to put my personal beliefs along with what I was taught or learned from each assignment was much easier to kind of enjoy the process. Some assignments were not that fun to dig into, but several of them were a really great reminder of not only the task that I was required to do, but the application that still applies to my teaching today. The first 10 artifacts were provided as a list to me, but the second two were an optional and a choice to be able to reflect on parts of my teaching that I thought were strongest that weren't already included. As each artifact was retrieved, I also went back and looked at the feedback that went in with it. Now, I somehow did pretty good, and most assignments had minor adjustments or no adjustments at all. But the greatest part of that was how it represented the time and effort put into the original assignment to make it the best possible version so that revisions and edits were not required. There are always a few changes that I would want to make to a written piece just because thinking, learning, engagement, students all evolve over time. But the goal of going into the master's program was always to be better than I was before the master's program. So this translated to reading all the materials, applications, and effort towards everything that was required and doing everything possible to create a successful outcome in every single class. The ability to revise the work was confirmed how much work I really did put into each assignment in every single course and helped to build that knowledge and demonstrate or remind myself of how much knowledge was really gained in order to pursue any future endeavors that I have in the educational field. So, revision was actually a pretty instrumental piece in the learning process. As each reflection came up, the purpose of each written piece was to be very objective and critical. The self reflection of work is an element that I naturally often employ into my daily skills. But while this work was personal, I wanted to better learn from that particular piece and that assignment. So the objective approach was the one I wanted to take. Sometimes objective and possibly defensive stances were taken to help see a better picture of the work done throughout the 2 years in the program. For example, I would become defensive when there was corrective feedback if I didn't necessarily agree, but trying to remain objective was the key. The challenge was not to be overcritical of the work and really to allow each piece to be placed on a public forum where other opinions could be represented. With that in mind, the design of the portfolio was to allow the work the personal background information and plus my future goals in education to be represented. The hope was to create a domain that is personal and representative of me as a person and as an educator. Clear and clean is something I strive for within my classroom, so the base of the web page was similar to how my actual classroom is. The next option was to reformat some pages, because going into building the website originally during some classes, some things were applicable then, but not now. So when I redesigned the website to reflect the portfolio, I really kind of was able to clean up the look of it and the navigation. Now that the whole portfolio is shown, the way the information is laid out is meant to be much easier to gain access to all of those elements and those pieces. And since the platform is similar, building the portfolio in each page was actually pretty fun. And it allowed me to be a little creative and exercise my design skills. So once the outline and setup was decided upon, the creation of it didn't take a lot of time. I'm already familiar with the platform that I used because it is a platform that is already implemented within my county. So adjustments from earlier classes were simple and small. The portfolio was easier since the prior classes has already allowed me to make those connections and link my way through in the portfolio. So the portfolio and the reflection process were a little bit of an easier undertaking once I had pre-decided my approach and my efforts into it. Some of the challenges were the time and the focus needed to complete the tasks. Allowing myself to watch and critique long videos of teaching or lessons that had occurred was some of the challenge. And being able to carve out that time to be able to truly review the pieces that were submitted, ensure that I could get all the adjustments made based on the feedback that I had for myself or from a professor, and then completing the reflection of that particular assignment. Sometimes creating the reflection could be daunting to start because I didn't know what I wanted to say about the piece, or I didn't know how I felt about the piece. And my personality, and through this whole entire process, it's really not in my nature to complete things with good enough. When I decided to start my educational career and I went and got a bachelor's in education, there was never a single time when just being an educator was going to be enough. If I was going to take all this time and this effort, it was going to be because I wanted to reach an excellent educator status. I don't know what that looks like and when I'll achieve it, but that's always the goal. And I want to be proud of the work that I produce every single time. So this drive to be an amazing educator follows through on a time and effort in the assignments that I needed to produce, and in order to create that best possible outcome. So the tools gained through this process helped to really gain a successful understanding of several applications, some knowledge and tools that had been missing or a little forgotten within my teaching in my classroom. And there were some elements that I just didn't include, but I do now. Some of the components were reminders of what I had learned in my bachelor's degree. And some things needed to be revived, and others were there to be helpful guide to future choices and methods. So the largest part that was both a challenge and a strength was that reflection, the ability to critique and look and see if I was able to implement what I needed to, how I needed to, and when I needed to. And the time and effort needed to really dig so much deeper into what I was creating was a struggle, but also very eye opening into where I stood mentally and what I thought versus how the execution and delivery went. The emotional attachment and reminder of the learning can be really helpful in making the decision on how to pursue the information, but it also was the struggle to find more in to what I did when I had already known I was putting in the best effort. And so combining both worlds, creating that logical sense where I could truly reflect and dig deeper while understanding that my best doesn't mean it was the best. So, really, in the end, I feel like a reflection process is a major and key component, but it can really only be what the person decides it's going to be. And for me, that time was very personal and very necessary in order to grow as an educator. And in this case, I think the process was good for me. And the whole point of the exercise to be able to find the areas of growth and development, and sometimes be able to admit that I'm really proud of what I've done, what I've created, and what I am capable of doing.